Larry David may not do a whole lot of stand up, but as the creator of Curb Your Enthusiasm and co creator of Seinfeld, he is certainly one of America's funniest guys. Though I have to admit, Jason Alexander was so on point, playing George Costanza, it's hard to imagine Seinfeld sitting around with anyone else creating that show. But create it with Larry he did, and now David is going after Trump's race towards fascism with one of the most powerful weapons in the arsenal against totalitarianism, parody. David wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times that is a complete and utter trolling of Bill Maher, and it couldn't happen to a more phony guy. Maher has made a career of pretending to be a centrist who criticizes both the left and the right as extremists and hypocrites, only it never adds up. Maher pretends to speak as the defender of common sense, and it's only coincidence that the left lacks way more common sense than the right. And nowhere is that false centrism more on display than Maher's recent dinner with Donald Trump, a move that everyone but Maher recognizes as nothing less than an attempt to normalize a pathological narcissist who is tanking the world economy and plucking brown people off the streets and throwing them into torture prisons in El Salvador with no questions asked. Now, Maher anticipated this kind of criticism right from the get-go, so when he talked about the dinner on his show, he headed off that criticism early on by saying this.
And let me first say that to all the people who treated this like it was some kind of summit meeting, you're ridiculous. Like I was going to sign a treaty or something. I have no power. I'm a comedian, and he's the most...
Okay, now that just came out of the mouth of a guy who just admitted that he was friends with Kid Rock. So tell us again who's ridiculous. And it's not surprising. Maher started out his whole piece with a Fox rhetorical favorite, exaggerating a position, usually via a false dichotomy, and offering your position or action as reasonable. Like this.
As you know, 12 days ago I had dinner with President Trump, a dinner that was set up by my friend Kid Rock, because we share a belief that there's got to be something better than hurling insults from 3,000 miles away.
So there it is, Maher subtly dismissing people calling out Trump's illegal and unconstitutional actions as just hurling insults. Then Maher went on with his familiar shtick, making fun of both the left via Bill Clinton and then Trump himself via a Trump social media post. It was all fake balance so he could deliver this.
But when I got there, that guy wasn't living there. Now, does Trump want respect? Of course, who doesn't? Just for starters, he laughs. I'd never seen him laugh in public, but he does, including at himself. And it's not fake. Believe me, as a comedian of 40 years, I know a fake laugh when I hear it.
And if you're wondering whether all the innocent people sent to the torture prison in El Salvador now feel better knowing that Trump has a human side, the answer is no. No, they don't. And this nonsense of humanizing Trump and offering smirking critique here and there went on for 12 minutes. It was, to use Maher's own words, ridiculous. And Larry David thought so too, because he just totally spoofed Maher by writing this opinion piece for the New York Times, My Dinner with Adolf. The piece is a stunning political takedown using the surgical precision of parody and makes Maher look like a fool. So to Maher's line about hurling insults from 3,000 miles away, David wrote, I knew I couldn't change his views, but we need to talk to the other side, even if it has invaded and annexed other countries and committed unspeakable crimes against humanity. But David threw his hardest punch at Maher's ridiculous point about public versus private persona and the role of laughter. David wrote this, and I'm going to switch around titles and names. I joked that I was surprised to see him in a tan suit because if he wore that out, it would be perceived as un-Führer-like. That amused him to no end, and I realized I'd never seen him laugh before. Suddenly, he seemed so human. Here I was, prepared to meet Adolf, the one I'd seen and heard, the public Führer. But this private Adolf was a completely different animal. And oddly enough, this one seemed more authentic, like this was the real Adolf. The whole thing had my head spinning. And that is just a portion of what David had to say. I'm not going to read any more because it's worth reading it yourself. Larry David goes through the rest of what Maher had to say about the dinner and just harpoons him. Earlier in his monologue, Bill Maher said, "I'm just a comedian." No, you're not, Bill. Maybe you used to be, but you're not anymore. You're just the guy who goes out there now and says what the comedy writers wrote for you tonight. Larry David, on the other hand, is a comedian. Why? Because not only was his parody of the Trump dinner very funny, but the use of the genre itself shows what a huge phony Maher is. Larry David did not hurl an insult from 3,000 miles away. Instead, he chose option B, to cut Maher down to size, not with insult, but with parody. And that's what makes Larry David funny and Bill Maher ridiculous. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.